Hello, everyone. This is Evan, and welcome back to another tournament report. Today, guys, I have a first place league challenge that I won on Thursday playing JOLTIK Box. Um, so, yeah, here's the list I played. JOLTIK Box is not a deck that I really had any experience playing. This was like the first time I played the deck because kind of my idea with challenges right now is I want to play the most consistent deck available, even if it doesn't have the best matchup spread, because decks like Charizard and Gardevoir that have good matchup spreads into pretty much the entire format. However, they do brick maybe one in every 5 games. I'm fine playing those types of decks to like a cup or something because the Swiss rounds you can afford to take one loss, and then once you get to best of three, top cut you can still afford one loss. But in a challenge, if you brick one game, you just lose the challenge on the spot because essentially in a challenge, if you're just chasing the first place, if you lose one game, like you just can't really win most of the time. So I always want to play something consistent, even if it doesn't have the best matchup spread. And I think something like Joltik Box or Raging Bolt fits this description pretty well, which are the two decks that I've won challenges with this season. So here's the list. I know the list probably isn't as good as it could be. I didn't really have a chance um, to like perfect the list or test it at all because I got home at like 6 p.m. and the challenge was at 7. It was like a 35-minute drive, and I had a few more things I had to get done as well. So I barely made it on time. I didn't even have the entire deck. When I got there, I had to like borrow the electrics and Genesect from someone. So I managed to get there on time, and this was the list I played. There are probably a few changes you could make, but anyways, I'll go ahead and go over the cards real quick. The Pokemon lineup is pretty standard. I think pretty much everyone is playing 2 Joltiks and 1 Galvantula, 2 Pikas, 2 Miraidons, and 2 Iron Hands. That's just your, core electric type lineup right there. The 1/1 electric, I definitely think electric is worth playing right now. Kind of the issue with Joltik Box last format is it has a lot of early game consistency. Like you pretty much are always setting up with this deck. However, if the game goes more than like 3 turns, you oftentimes just lose because the deck just isn't very sustainable late game because you kind of just run out of energy acceleration. However, the electric kind of fixes that problem. You get to use Dynamotor every turn, and you kind of have a little more sustainability. And then, of course, Fez, Mew, Latias, Genesect, Bundle, Blood Moon, all very standard cards. I did decide to play Clefairy. This was literally a last minute inclusion. I did not originally have the Clefairy in the list. However, I expected um, to maybe find 1 or 2 Dragapults at the challenge, so I kind of didn't want to take a bad matchup into that. So I think the Clefairy is worth playing. Um, the supporters just 4 Crispin, 4 Boss, 4 Arven. I did not play Iono because I actually don't think Disruption really does that much for this deck in a lot of situations. 4 Nest Ball, 4 Gear, 3 Ultra Balls. I did have to cut the 4th Ultra Ball. Looking back, I maybe would like to have another one, just because playing max consistency is pretty good. 1 Prime Catcher, 1 Vessel. The tools are Bravery Charm, Vitality Band, EXP Share, and Air Balloon. And then, of course, all of our energies. So there's the list. Looking back, I might would go with Azul's idea of cutting the Latias and just adding like a second Air Balloon. However, that does mean you often just lose if you open Blood Moon or Iron Hands. So I don't know for sure if that's the way to go, but I definitely could see it being pretty good. But yeah, there's the list. Now we're going to get into the matches. I think I actually didn't play my best at this challenge, which I guess is kind of understandable because I like picked up this deck last minute, had no games with it, and honestly, I made like a lot of misplays because I didn't really practice my matchups at all. But game one, I played against a Terrabox. Very good opponent. Game one, he's day 2'd multiple regionals, and um, he was actually from like the other side of the country. Uh, well, maybe not the entire other side of the country, just yeah, like several states down. But he he was like visiting and came to the challenge with his dad, and I actually played both of them. So I'll get to that um in a little while. But anyways, he was playing Terrabox, and this matchup I expected it to be like pretty okay for me. However, it ended up being an interesting match for sure. I didn't really know how to play the matchup that well, but I did kind of misplay because I benched the Genesect, baby Genesect, and I was planning to put a tool on it later on. I just wanted to thin it out of the deck because I opened with like 2 or 3 nest balls in my hand. So I just wanted to go ahead and thin that. However, I didn't really take into consideration that he could sob my Joltik, which is what he did. So I actually just didn't have the pieces to retreat because I couldn't find Galvantula or um, yeah, really just the Galvantula. So I just used Jolting Charge again, and then the next turn he used Torrential Pump, knocked out Joltik and Genesect. I was able to, I think I knocked out the Ogre Button, and he knocked out my Iron Hands with Terapagos. So at that point, he had 2 prize cards and I had 3. I'm kind of in a bad spot, and my options are so I'm attacking with Blood Moon no matter what. And I have Charm on the Blood Moon, so I'm denying the Pikachu, so he can't attack with Pikachu. My options here, if I can either knock out the Terapagos and hope that he does not find um, Boss plus Blood Moon, but he also has Fez, so he has a good chance of finding that. Or I could knock out the Fez and hope he just doesn't have Boss in his 5 card hand. I end up knocking out the Terapagos, which he agreed was the correct play, but he ended up whiffing the boss off of the Fez and then Teal Mask for 1. And he had no Hoot Hoots in play, so that wasn't an option either. But he ended up whiffing boss, and I was able to take that one. Did get kind of lucky there. I don't think I played the matchup that great, but I ended up getting a bit lucky. Round 2, I hit a Grimmsnarl, and I was never able to attack with hands in this matchup, and I also had Galvantula Price pretty much the entire game. So I was actually just taking knockouts with like Miraidon and Pikachu because I couldn't ever attack with an Iron Hands because he immediately knocked it out because he was playing like a 1 prize more Pico. So he, like, as soon as I Jolting Charged onto the Iron Hands, he bossed it and knocked it out with more Pico. Um, and yeah, uh, yeah, he knocked that out, and it was kind of just like a price trade. And then at the very end of the game, he whiffed boss again. Otherwise, if he had boss, he would have won. He kind of Ionoed himself and didn't draw a great hand off of the Iono, which is kind of the issue with Grimmsnarl. The deck just doesn't have a draw engine. So uh, I got game 2. And this matchup should be like super favored for me, but it was actually very close. My opponent played pretty well. Round 3, I hit a Typhlosion Pidgeot. I think this matchup is actually pretty bad for me because if they can just attack with the Typhlosion every turn, I can definitely have some difficulty winning this matchup. My opponent took 1 prize on the Joltik pretty early on. However, he oh yeah, also something I mentioned was I basically bricked this game. I my turn 1 was bench Iron Hands, attach pass, and then I gave him like 2 turns to set up, but then finally I top decked Arven, so I was able to Jolting Charge, and my opponent knocked out the Joltik. However, the issue was he had 1 Typhlosion on the bench, and then he just knocked out the Joltik with a Quilava. However, he had the other Typhlosion in hand because he got it off of Ethan's, and I think his idea was to not have to waste a Typhlosion by attacking with it. However, I think attacking with Typhlosion was definitely better because I would have had to just boss the Victini, but instead I was able to just save boss and just amp the Quilava. Um, and my opponent was never able to take a knockout again from there because I think he whiffed the knockout the next turn, so I just amped for 2 more, and then, he still didn't have a knockout, so I just won that one by bossing the Fez and knocking it out with Miraidon. So I'm 3-0 at this point. Round 4, I hit another Terrabox, the same 60 as round 1 because, uh, this Terrabox player was, um yeah, it was like a father and a son. So I was playing against the dad in game 4, and um, both of them were very nice opponents. Very fun games for sure. Like those were like some of the most fun games um, with JOLTIK Box that I've played. Um, and this one was actually like very interesting. So my opponent and I both didn't have a great setup. He went first. He had like a mediocre turn 1. My hand, I started Iron Hands, which was not great, and my hand was 3 energies, Galvantula, Crispin, and Nest Ball. So if I top deck an Ultra Ball, I'm actually in a pretty good spot because I can Nest Ball for either Latias or Miraidon, and then use the other Ultra Ball, or really just any out to a Pokemon. So like Nest Ball or just finding like Miraidon or Latias works either, and then I can get both the Miraidon and the Latias and Miraidon for Pikachu and Joltik, and then use Jolting Charge. And then I top deck the Ultra Ball, so I'm very happy to see that top deck. However, when I start searching the deck, Latias is prized. So I have my Iron Hands just stranded in the active spot. So I have to just Crispin onto the Iron Hands, and um and I pass. The idea being that if I can top deck another out to Crispin, I can um use Amp. I also just Ultra Balled for the Mew EX to like restart for 1. However, my opponent just hit for like 120 into my Iron Hands with Strapagos. So at this point, I draw and then I just like attach to Pikachu and pass. And I'm kind of wishing that I had um just Crispin on the Pikachu because I didn't really play around the potential for my opponent. Just I didn't really play around the potential play from my opponent of just attacking with Terapagos. I didn't really think about it, so I kind of misplayed, I think. But he knocked out the hands. I top decked another Crispin, although I would have been able to thin a little bit with um, some of the cards in my hand and then restart. But I just top decked the Crispin. I Crispined on the Pikachu and then just knocked out the Terapagos. So we're both at 4 prizes now. He ends up just swinging for 70 with Fan Rotom into my Pikachu, and at that point, I believe um I have like no energies in play at this point, but I'm able to I think Dynamotor onto I don't remember what I did. I think I either used Dynamotor or Crispin so that I could um attach to the Pikachu and Joltik, and then I just used a Jolting charge to charge up another Iron Hands. And then my opponent knocks out the Joltik, so he's on 3 prices now. And typically, if I can force my opponent onto odd prices, it's pretty good. I end up bossing a Hoothoot and knocking it out with Amp. And then I forgot my opponent played Briar, so he was like a 1 piece short of having the Briar knockout on my Iron Hands. But instead, he doesn't have it, so he just Ionos and attacks with, I think, Blood Moon. So I already have all the pieces to. Um, wait, no, I'm sorry. He actually just swings into my Iron Hands with like Terapagos or something. Or actually, I think it was Blood Moon. He swung into my Iron Hands with Blood Moon because I had Bravery Charm attached. So he's at 3 and I'm at 2. He Ionoed me into 2 cards, and my 2 were Clefairy and Arven, and I have Mew in play, so I can potentially restart. I top deck Pokegear, and I need to just find boss off of this Pokegear. So pretty much like everyone at the challenge is watching this, and Um, and I flip over the cards from the Pokegear, and the seventh card was the boss's orders, and everyone was pretty hyped about that one. So I ended up winning that one. Otherwise, my opponent would have had the Briar play, I'm pretty sure. So, uh, very exciting game in that last one, and I got my second challenge win with JOLTIK Box. I'm also playing a cup tomorrow, so see how that goes. But yeah, thank you guys for watching. I'll probably do another tournament report once I can win a cup. But yeah, I'll see you guys.